everyone. This is first in what I hope is to be a few videos in this series of book recommendations, and I thought I'd try and do it a little bit by genre, but you'll see other things pop up on here later on as I go through. But today's is going to be TV and film tie-ins. So this could be books that are novelizations, or those that are set within the universe of the film or the TV series and tie into it directly. So these are in no particular order. They are not scored from highest to lowest or anything. These are just what I think you might find interesting if you kind of want to dip your toe into this genre. So film and TV tie-in, obviously there's many films out there that have been novelised. There are also many TV shows that have had their episodes novelised, or that they've had books released that kind of tie into the show in some way or other. So I'm going to start off with the big film, and that is Star Wars. I've picked for this Star Wars A New Hope and Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Now these are kind of like the first books of the original lot of books that came out. A New Hope is obviously a novelisation of the first film. Yes, I'm counting them in that order. Tough. This is based on George Lucas's screenplay and has a few extra details in it that didn't make it to the film. Following on from that, this is the directly next book, Splinter of the Mind's Eye, written by Alan Dean Foster, but this was going to be kind of like the next part of the story, but obviously it took a different turn as George Lucas decided to go off. But these are some of the original notes and some of the original ideas that were scripted down and turned into a book, and actually it's not a bad book. So obviously there are loads more other Star Wars books out there, and I will cover some of them later on in the series of these videos. But those are the two that if you don't know where to start and you're kind of wondering what it's all about, those are the two that I would say pick those up. This gives you a good idea of extra info and some extra lore that George Lucas was planning and wanted to put into his films. Next up, I've got Once Upon a Time tie-in. This is Red's Untold Tale, written by Wendy Tolver. This is an unseen episode of Red, or Ruby, from Storybook, as she's discovering who and what she is. Obviously, Red is Little Red Riding Hood, and those of you that know Once Upon a Time will know her storyline, but this is set before the story that's told on screen. And it gives us a little bit more about Red's character, Red's relationship with her grandmother, and what's going on where she lives in the village she lives in. And I thought it was a really nice addition to the story. So if you're a Once Upon a Time fan, I would recommend that book for you. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Obviously a big series for people of my generation, that's those in their 30s. And there are lots of books. There are tie-in books that are direct novelizations of certain episodes, particularly the early season. And then there are obviously books that expanded the story and took things a bit further on. But for this video, I've picked Tales of the Slayer. These are collections of short stories that follow various Slayers throughout history. So there's not just Buffy in here. I have read at least one of these and several of the stories across the board, and I would say they're all of a high quality. They're written by people who know Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They've either written for it on telly or they've written it as part of the spin-off books. So they know the subject matter and they know a lot about the whole Slayer lore and everything. What's nice about these is because we're meeting Slayers we don't know, we have no idea how these stories are going to pan out, what the outcome's going to be, and whether these girls are going to survive or not, because, you know, the life expectancy of a Slayer, as we know, is short, and it's a harsh one. And these stories cover the whole of history and a whole realm of other problems, as well as what it means to be a Slayer, whether that's you've discovered you're a Slayer or you've been a Slayer for a few years and something's happening. So there are really a wide variety of stories in these collections. And if you're a Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan and you haven't read these books yet, I would suggest pick up one of these. It doesn't matter which volume you get, they're all standalone stories, but certainly immerse yourself a bit more in the history of the Slayer line. The next big TV show really is, after Star Trek, would be Doctor Who. So I've gone for Eye of Heaven. This is written by Jim Mortimer. and The English Way of Death by Gareth Roberts. Now this book I think has been recently republished. This edition you can't get hold of anymore, but it has been republished, and I would say if you're a fan of the Fourth Doctor, particularly the Fourth Doctor and Second Romana and that kind of era, this is the book for you. There is a trilogy of books written by Gareth Roberts set in that season where he captures the feel of the production at the time, the acting at the time, and the whole fun that was going on with Tom and Lala, and just the whole hilarity that they were all having while making this show. And this book is probably my favourite out of the trilogy. It's a historical mystery, sci-fi, paranormal, supernaturally mashup. And it's just brilliant. It pushes what you would have seen on the screen quite far in terms of body horror and gruesomeness, but some of it is just brilliant. And there's a great scene where the Doctor puts a cup of tea into his pocket and you're sitting there thinking, is that a typo? No. Several pages later, he pulls out his cup of tea and continues drinking it. So it's moments like that that really make this book. And I would say if you can find a copy of this book, please read it because it's great. Eye of Heaven is the BBC publication one. This one is Virgin before it lost the rights. But this is the original BBC publication run that they had before they all went to the hardbacky lots and it was back on the screen. And this is the Fourth Doctor and Leela book. And this story is told from Leela's point of view. For those of you that don't know Classic Who very well, Leela is a savage. She's a very intelligent savage, but she sees things very, very differently from the normal modern day companion, as you would. And this story is told from her perspective. She's not been travelling with the Doctor very long, so everything to her is very strange and very alien. And of course he takes her to Earth. And it's 1842 in this book, so everything is very, very alien. There's no modern tech to anything for her to latch onto because that's the world she comes from. And it's just really a good example of how to take a character on screen that you know the actress has put a lot of work into making a fully fleshed character, but the writer in this book takes it even further and shows you kind of maybe the thought process that the actress has gone through to develop Leela into the way that we love and know her now. But this story never happened on screen, so we never got to see any of that development. Everything that we see on screen is through Louise Jameson's performance and what she does and what she feels about her character. And this book is just amazing for taking a character that we don't know much about really and making her live and breathe so fully. It's amazing. Now, the next set of books I'm going to suggest are novelizations. And they are of the Alien films. Now, I've only got the first, well, I've got two, 3 and 4 here at the moment. Book 1 is somewhere else. I'm not sure where it's gone at the moment. But they are based on the original, or as close as you can get, original screenplays of the films. But the beauty is that means there's things in these books that aren't in the films. It's got all those added details, extra character details, extra suspense and horror moments, and more background information on characters and the alien herself. So what I like about these books is, yeah, it means I can sort of delve into the alien world without actually being terrified because I don't do facehuggers, but they add quite a bit to the films. They really give you a lot more extra information and you kind of understand more what's going on the screen because you've read the novelization, which is a shame. You shouldn't have to do that to get a film, and you can enjoy the films, but if you want that little bit more, that little bit more meat and a little bit more understanding, read the novelizations. And then I've got X-Files. This is Ground Zero, written by Kevin J. Anderson. This was the first X-Files book I actually came across. I didn't watch the X-Files at the time. I knew it was around. I knew it was a big thing, but I never got around to watching it. So I had this actually on cassette, read by Gillian Anderson. And I loved it. It's kind of like the classic X-Files story. There's aliens involved, there's a government cover-up going on, local people are getting hurt, and Mulder and Scully have their great moments. So if you want more X-Files of the original series, this is probably a good place to start. I would highly suggest other books in the series like Goblins, Antibodies and Whirlwind, because they're all just as good. And finally, not strictly related to film or TV, but about film and TV, and that's Moving Pictures by Terry Pratchett, part of the Discworld series. If you are pondering about Discworld and wondering when on earth to start with all the books, this one covers film and TV, and there are a lot of film and TV tropes in this book that you will recognise. There is a great moment that sends up King Kong in here. And it's written with Terry's usual wit, wisdom and sarcasm. It's very enjoyable, and it is pretty much a standalone book as well, so you could read this by yourself, not having to know anything else. There we go. So, first video in my book recommendation series, film and TV tie-ins. Obviously, if you've got other film and TV tie-ins that you think are worth reading, leave them in the comments below so I can go and have a look, or say yes, I totally agree with you. Or other people watching this video can also go and see your recommendations down below. I didn't want to do the traditional, you should read this book because it's better than the film. I wanted to do books in this video that were related to the visual medium, and that the film or the TV show had come first. So these books are directly linked to another medium. They're not been pinched and converted into a film like Lord of the Rings. That'll probably be another video down the line. I'll make a note of that. So let me know, what are your recommendations? I hope I've given you some idea of maybe where you want to start with a film or TV tie-in book. There are loads out there and you can get swamped very, very easily. And of course, there are many, many more out there. These are only the ones that I've got floating about on my book cases. So, you know, if you come across one you think, yeah, I quite fancy that, give it a go. As always, my social media links are in the box down below. You can find me on Goodreads, Twitter and Instagram. And as always, thank you very much for watching and happy reading, everyone. Bye!